All right. Well, here's a fun one. You've probably already come to this realization or something close to it yourselves. All news is fake news. The last few days, especially, I've been starting to get that more and more of that impression. It's all just fake. There's no facts anymore. It's all fake. What does that mean? Well, the news seems to be getting more and more just opinion. All these opinion pieces, misinformation, disinformation, far more than fact. Seems like saying whatever people want or what they think we want to hear is all they do. Whether it's, oh yes, we're going to provide more funding for um, our NATO military commitments, hubs in the north, different incentives, money back to people, whatever it is, say it. And then when you look into it, the funding may exist sometime in the future, and there's nothing right now. Stories continually getting revised, updated, changed almost daily. This one that initially made me think about this was the asteroid that, in 2032, there's a 1 in 70 chance, which is a pretty good chance, of an asteroid hitting the Earth. Then the next day it went to 1 in 40 or something like that. And then, well, no, maybe not so much, but it's just going to hit the moon. Well, like that's a whole lot better. And no, maybe now it'll miss us totally. Every time someone's always redacting numbers, changing numbers, revising numbers. You don't really have a good picture. What's the unemployment rate? What's, GDP numbers, inflation, all of this stuff. You don't know what to believe at all anymore. There seems to be no more fact checking, or they check the facts and then that turns out to be wrong. If you're acting based on the news, you're too late. If that's what your trigger is to only do, now you could use that as a trigger for some things, but just realize how much time has passed since that news is useful. And words just seem to be used completely without being the proper word. I was reading an article and they said, yeah, we're going to push for this is going to be sole source. And then they said, well, there were other options, but we're selecting this one. That's not sole source. You can single source. If it's the sole source, it is the only source. Now, if you make a decision to have the only supplier of something as your supplier, now you really have to decide if you need that. Is it truly worth that kind of risk? Unprecedented. That's one of my big pet peeves. Everything is unprecedented. I doubt it. Surging, crashing. Stocks crashed today. They went down 1%. I would probably pick a different word than crash, or exploding, and they went up 1%. So what do you do about all this? Now, we're not going to be able to really change what's in the news, but what's the takeaway from all this for us? Just like in training, run your own race. Use the news if you're going to, really, I read the news every day as well, and I try and use that to think ahead for my planning. Not necessarily to take action on that particular point or topic, but to kind of extrapolate out of it as to what I could do. Or use it to validate your planning. If, let's say, you had picked a stock for your portfolio a while ago, and now you're seeing that it's doing well. Or there's information about, hey, you should be planning for this, and everybody else jumps on the bandwagon and you're already ahead of the game. Well, that kind of validates maybe what you're doing. Or a cross-check, your plans against, okay, if this scenario happened, as they're outlining it in the news, would my plans have held? Would they still be good? Don't use it to tell you exactly what to do. Otherwise, you'll be planning for an asteroid strike one day, and the next day, you won't be. Ignore and limit your exposure to the doom and gloom stuff. That's what I would do. For a while, I was on a whole bunch of prepper sites all the time and watch all these things and track all these different indices and different things I was looking at. And then I got busy with a bunch of my projects, more so than at other times. Haven't gone back to look, and I go back now, and it's this exact same stuff. I didn't miss anything. Fact check yourself. Go to sources that you think are reliable. Use multiple sources of information. Form your own opinions. Listen to things that go against your way of thinking. When I was running this morning, I was listening to a podcast on some different topics, and they were specifically not. I didn't agree with it as I listened to it. I wasn't agreeing. I didn't turn it off. I kept listening, and take it all with a big grain of salt. When I used to put a lot more faith in the news, and then for years as a firefighter, you would come back from a call, and I'm sure other people that are at scenes, police officers, EMS, anyone who's actually at that incident, you come back, you read about it in the news, and you think, well, that's not exactly what happened, or sometimes it's not even close. Where they miss things, they don't report on things, they have their own bias, they have their own slant on it, of course, and you read about it and go, that's not at all what happened. But that's what people are hearing. Or you're at that call, and it's stuff that people should know, and it doesn't make the news at all. So your faith really gets shaken in a big hurry. How many sides of a coin are there? Well, like the old saying goes, if you and I see something, there'll be your view, my view, and then the truth. 3 sides to every coin. There's lots of sides. We need some of the D&D 100-sided dice. Because, for as many people that witness something, from their perspective, it might be true, even to them. And it's not the whole picture. So you really, really have to, think about these things. Next steps. Understand why you're doing things, not just looking for what to do. The what's too prescriptive. You have to have that bigger, take it back, make risk-based decisions. So what are the risks? What's the probability and the impact? And that'll give you your risk. And then how do you decrease that risk? How do you lower either the probability or lower the impact, or both? Look at your critical processes. You can't just go to the news and say, okay, what should I plan for today? Asteroid strike, bird flu, tariffs, all of these things. Forget about all that stuff. What are your critical processes? Well, I have to eat. Okay. So now, what can you do to make sure that you can eat? Well, I need money to buy groceries. So do I have enough for that? Do I have different suppliers, different outlets I can go to get that? Can I buy locally? If you're doing, kind of homesteading, buying local, things like that anyways, it's good for the local economy when there's not tariffs as well. So you should be doing those things anyways. Have your own food sources. Have a little garden. Things like that. Do an impact and risk assessment. It's not difficult, right? There's some people can make it really complicated, but at its heart, it's very simple. What are your controls? What are your plans? What are you going to do? Well, I need to breathe. I need to eat. I need to drink water. How do I make sure to do all those things? Well, then you just walk through. I need electricity. Okay. Do you have backups for your electricity? Well, do you have to either keep getting electricity or ways to have heat and cook without electricity? So you can look at every single one of your critical decisions, whether that's for you personally, and that's where the rule of 3 comes in. They say you can't survive very long without air. You can't survive very long without water. And that's where you'll hear, to make it simple, like 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, just generalizations. But so then you're prepping, start with that. Okay, air, 3 minutes without air. So what would I do if the air was contaminated right now? Do I have a half mask filter, a full face mask, an SCBA, something like that? What am I going to do for air? Okay, well, I've got that, or I either just say I have to accept that risk, or I've got some N95 masks, which also help with smoke, or I've got a half mask respirator or something like that, or a gas mask, with CBRN filters. So, okay, I've got air. Now, what about shelter? Okay, well, I've got my house, I've got a tent, I've got a camper, I've got different, okay, I've got that. Okay, now what about water? I'm on the water main, or I've got a well, I've got rainwater catchment, bottled water, food, right? And you just go through what are those key things. Same thing with your business. You walk through the same procedures. Well, that's it. That's all. Hopefully, that's something to think about. Again, all news is fake news. Hope you like it. Make your own decisions. Make good decisions. And like and subscribe.